Iggy, we've had some very profound sessions with you. Um, very emotional, at least from my end. I'm sure it is from your end. The revealing the trauma and the abuse that you and your community have suffered over the years. We've chatted about the residential school. We've chatted about when you were living with the white families, and then I'm hoping, if you're open to this, that we talk about your work life. That begins to impact a little bit about, not impact, but it starts to cross over into what I do. I've spent some time in the past helping nations with connecting members to jobs in the Lower Vancouver Island manufacturing sector, and there's a lot of challenges to making that work. Maybe you can talk about why that is. What was that like in your various jobs as you started to work a few years ago?
Oh yeah. Um, well, when I went to the foster home and living on a farm, you learned how to work. And that's one thing back then I never understood why I was there from being from residential school and reserve life, never having a dad because my dad was killed in a car accident. I had a lot to learn on my own about making in this world. And being on that farm, you learned how to work hard from morning till night in farmer's life. And like I say, I don't know why I was there. Never understood it, but that's the way my life turned out. And I used that experience of on the farm when I went to a job. Couldn't believe how easy the job was when I first started working and getting paid for it, driving truck and delivering meat. And that came to the point where when I got my first check, that's when I realized I was free from everything, not having not having to answer to anybody about what I could do and cannot do. And I just felt so free in my first time in my life when I got that my check. And the guys around me at the job were all they knew I had come from a foster home. So a lot of them took me under their wing. They were pretty good to me and advising me and stuff how to make it in this world.
That is really fantastic because barriers, one of the challenges I've encountered with companies here, this is now in 2025, is open hostility, racism, prejudice,
Yeah.
to the degree that we defaulted to actually hiring two or three individuals at a time, so that they could be supporting each other in the work environment. I'm really glad to hear that. I'm sure you encountered that, but there were some folks who helped you. That's wonderful.
I appreciate them, and I know that feeling of. I used to hear it a lot from a lot of young First Nations guys that they couldn't handle the racism, and I've always just told them to try to be strong-minded, be proud of who you are, never be ashamed of who you are. That's the big one, and be able to put up with that from other men, other people, other races. Be proud of who you are. Don't be run out of somewhere like your home around your area, your town, your village or whatever. Never be run off. That was my advice to a lot of like my brothers and my younger brother anyways. My older brother had his own mind, but I used to tell that to my little brother, never be run off by anybody. Be proud of who you are. And I've always taken my white foster father's words about the color of my skin. I can't change that. So never be ashamed of who you are. That was the big point.
Oh, that is a lesson for every human and every society. And these days, it seems like we're getting increasingly more confrontational,
Yeah.
and and those are great words. Uh, I guess, I mean, clearly you've. It's now clear that you have some special spirit. You have a real special warrior spirit in you. Um, did you find that the case with others who followed the same path as you did?
Um, there was a lot of other guys that that I heard came out of foster homes and that they went through that cycle too of alcoholism and helplessness and despair. But another word I used to always tell them was nobody's going to do this for you. You have to do it for yourself. And that's one thing I found out for me. My dad was gone, my grandfather was gone, and both my grandfathers, that's all I ever knew. But, and I always said that to my little brother, nobody's going to do it for us. We got to do it for ourselves. And was a lot of, I guess, a lot of hard times, but was able to cope in this world with that attitude. Like people tried talking down to me, but I never accepted it. It didn't bother me. Probably bothered them more than it didn't affect me. And I went clear across Canada working in the construction industry. I worked in Victoria here for a Croatian outfit, a Croatian guy to start off with. And they understood that, they kept saying, this is your country and you deserve better. And these guys were rich construction guys, and they said, we can sell you one of these condos on the end here, and you work for us. We'll keep you working for you to pay it off. But I never went that route. I had my own house here, but that was nice enough to offer that part. You don't meet very many people like that. They were Croatian, surprisingly.
That's my nationality.
Oh, yeah.
My name is Juricic, Croatian.
Okay. The guy I worked for was
But some of
Tony.
them aren't, not all of them are that kind.
They were always arguing with Serbia or somebody.
Correct. Fighting.
Yeah. But I worked for a guy called Tony Trbovich,
Oh, okay.
and they had a big connection of Croatian community where the head contractors were Croatian, the finance people, all the way
Yes.
down. So they offered me that condo on the end of this complex. But
That
like I
is
said, I never.
fascinating. That's fascinating. There's still some Croatians that run large development companies in Victoria now. I've worked for a couple of them as a sort of a developer assistant. Um, wow, that's fascinating, man. Looks like our paths have crossed spiritually somewhere in the past.
Yeah, yeah. It was that outfit I knew they had first of all, they had framers and then they had drywallers, electrician. They were all Croatian.
Hmm.
The drywallers the guys would frame it, drywallers come in, board it. The next guys would come in were Croatian tapers, stuff. They'd do the whole building in not very much time. They had all their ways of moving fast so they could move on to the next building.
That next one, sure,
Yeah.
efficiency. Um, did you maintain your carpenter training and skill set through your lives, or did you get into other positions?
I I worked for a guy, for brick company, Lane Block, for a while. And at the end of this time of the year, things would be slowing down, maybe another month of work, and they'd lay you off. And then he said to keep me working, he says, would you like to be in charge of the laborers, labor foreman, setting up jobs? Because I could read blueprints and the size steel or whatever, set up the job, you know. So I did that, and then I even went into concrete and helped pour concrete and stuff to keep working through the winter. So I did that for a few years. But when my son was born, I backed out of all of that because the doctor told me that he was going to have a disability. I couldn't tell. He just looked like a normal little boy to me, but they knew he had mental disabilities and stuff. He had cerebral palsy. He was born way too soon. And today he sits up and looks normal, but he's in a wheelchair because of the cerebral palsy you can only get when you're born. The oxygen to the central nervous system in your brain, he wasn't getting it. It affected his walking, talking, and he had to learn how to sit up and everything. I had to go through exercises with him. I learned a lot. I've always told that story of my son. I grew up around him, taught me respect, taught me compassion, and that was my son. I had to learn to respect his feelings and things that he wanted to do, even though it took him a while. I had to be patient and let him do things that he was trying to do instead of rushing around and putting him in the chair or whatever. But
Iggy, we need to get you as a motivational speaker.
oh,
This is very uplifting today.
uh,
Were there some other stories you'd like to share with us during your work years that were either positive or negative that as a direct result of your community and culture?
I with my work and like I say, I started off as a truck driver in Vancouver. When I first got out of the foster home, I was 18. Stayed there for a few years. My cousin, to get me back home, got me a job here near the reserve, James Island, CIL explosives, making dynamite. So I came home to that. But I stayed there for a few years, and the company started shutting down. The guys with seniority got moved to the shipyards, and I never had seniority, so I got laid off. And I was tired of looking for jobs like I started off with the driving the truck or meat companies and couldn't find anything. So I ended up in the one trade that was available, and I was laying block brick. So I did that for a few years, and that's how worked on places like BC Place Stadium and everything when everything was metric, and I had to buy a metric tape and learn to adjust again because everything was imperial, what you're taught in vocational school, half inch and 3/8 inch or whatever, you know.
Yes, of course. How did you find the reaction from the non Slavic
Oh,
folks?
in the BC place was a lot of Italians, believe it or
Oh,
not. Yeah. But
did they treat you okay?
yeah, they were pretty good. And there was a lot of guys, a lot of white guys from wherever, Abbotsford, Vancouver. And of course, I came from Vancouver Island to work there, and I loved that job, just working along the hallways and used to see all the media going through, but nobody ever stopped to talk to me,
Hmm.
eh? So I used to see them going through the hallways and stuff. And
If you uh, do you still work? Like do you or
no,
did you retire?
Retired. I've gone back to making those canoes, strip canoes, and that's what I've been doing. Trying to get better at it so I can maybe start my little business of my own, you know?
Right.
So,
So you make canoes out of, obviously out of trees.
yeah, the
Uh,
strip canoes are sawed are down to, I get a 2x4 or 2x6 and cut them down to a 1/4 inch strips by 2 inches, 10, 12 feet long. The canoe is 21 feet, so you put the two together and you do it in strips and layers all the way. Everything's drawn out to center line, so try to keep the canoe balanced.
and you do that yourself,
Yes,
and you sell it yourself.
yes. I don't charge as much as the going rate right now because I'm not as professional like a lot of these wood carvers and wood makers
Mm,
are, you know, because
I bet you are.
kind of started.
And does anyone work for you?
I got one guy helping me who wants to learn, a guy from the community here,
Right. Excellent.
and he wants a canoe of his own to paddle around on. He's 50 now, but he'd like to paddle around yet. So he
Well,
wants to make one, and he's here to help, and then he's a big help for
well,
my
today's stories have been really inspirational. Like I said, you need to be a speaker. Maybe Betsy and I can do something about that.
Yes.
Um, it,
but that's different because remember what I said right in the beginning? I hardly spoke because of what the residential school did to me by
mhm.
saying, don't speak, you're not worth listening to you. Who's going to listen to you? And things like that. For years and years, I just very quiet guy. Even in the longhouses, people try to get me to speak because they know I have a lot of knowledge. But over the years, my role has changed in the long as I am starting to speak. One of the girls from the canoe club was teaching me my language, my dad's language, Senchatan, teaching me how to introduce myself and my ancestral name and that. So it's starting to come along. I'm leaving that behind about not speaking, you know.
It's certainly come along. You're very inspirational. I love hearing your stories, and we're going to keep listening to them over time here. So why don't we leave this section
Okay.
as a separate video, and we pick it up very soon. Thank you, Iggy,
Okay.
once again.
Thank you.